Ricky Flex. Let's get into warfare here. Um, I guess I kind of just talked about how it kind of has a tone of like other Iraq war movies. What separates this one from movies like, American Sniper, from Zero Dark 30, from uh, The Hurt Locker? What makes warfare kind of different from what we've gotten in recent years?
I think a lot of it is just in the title of the movie, right?
Yeah.
This really focuses on the warfare aspect of it rather than a story and the character development and whatnot. This is only a 90-minute movie. It's very technical, like you said, with the handheld cameras, the sound design, the editing. It's very technical, which is always Alex Garland, but it's also focused on the grounded realism with a co-directing chair with Ray Mendoza being a guy who has worked on a lot of war movies before, but behind more of the choreography. How do you say that? The choreography?
Choreography or
Choreography.
choreographed depends on your
but
tense. I don't know what
but
the sentence was, but
but yeah, like he's worked on like the Terminal List, and he's worked on like
mm,
Mile 22, Lone Survivor as like the technical advisor for those roles, for those movies. And here he did it also for Civil War, and that's how he gets connected with Alex Garland and whatnot, and how this comes to be, right? But for me, like again, the difference is here, just kind of this movie is just different. It's intense, right? The character detail is very reduced, right? Just down to their behaviors. There's no really dialogue to really speak of any backstories. It's not really like any like heroism. Like there's not like one main protagonist where you're rooting for, like you are in like a Lone Survivor, or you are in, let's say, American Sniper that you mentioned. There's no Oliver Stone Vietnam politics going on here, or behind the scenes dramatics of like a Zero Dark 30. Like it's just all about what's going on with the soldiers, and not necessarily like any conflict between the two soldiers or the group and whatnot, any backstories, character detail, like I mentioned, just more about the warfare of it, all in the title of the movie.
I 100% agree. You could tell this movie was made by an Iraq War veteran. You could tell his goal was to capture the essence of the Iraq War and put you in right the room with this Navy SEAL team, and to kind of recognize war, like it's not always about killing people, but surviving, and by getting out of there, and by teamwork, and by never giving up. You know, and how it's also different. Like you mentioned, these other movies, they go in these long narrative arcs. You're usually traveling with one soldier or two soldiers. You're really like kind of analyzing their relationship throughout the entire thing. This movie is just like war is hell. We need to survive, and we're willing to do whatever it takes to get out of there. And it's also like you don't have the backstory on all these characters. You don't travel with them before and after. You don't see how they're going to react after the events that are going to leave them with severe trauma. Instead, like you're with them, see how you react, right? What would you do in this situation, right? This is a situation 99.99999% of people in the world will never find themselves in. And he's really trying to detail that. And also, this movie, it's like one setting. I didn't recognize that. I didn't think that from the trailer. That was a surprise to me how compact it is, one building. Um, the decisions that you're kind of watching them make inside of this one setting, inside of this house that they infiltrate, and they're trying to take out these Iraqi snipers. You're kind of dissecting it. You're seeing like, okay, this person performs well under pressure. This person doesn't perform well under pressure. So while you didn't have like backstory on a lot of these characters, you got to see like who's about it, who's not, who's severely impacted immediately by what's happening around them, who are the veterans, who are the rookies. I just found it fascinating. You could just tell this movie was made by a guy who's gone through it, and he's been around people that have been through these experiences. To have like that post credit scene, where it went through the filming of the movie and it had the veterans on set, it had Ray Mendoza, like a certified badass, like showing Joseph Quinn and Charles Melton how you need to turn a corner, how you need to walk out in the middle of danger, in the middle of gunfire. I'm like, this is a movie made for people that to show you what experiences in the Iraq War were like. It was truly one of the most realistic war depictions I've ever seen.
Yeah, like half the dialogue is just
Yeah,
military jargon. That's it's
comms.
Yeah, that was literally half the dialogue in this movie. Most of the movie, like what you interpret from it, is through the behaviors or the actions of the
Yes.
actual actors, and that's why not only like it younger actors, but they're kind of like a who's who on the internet for young stars in Hollywood. And it kind
Right.
of makes sense because you have to interpret those behaviors into kind of a story, which again, there is no backstories. There's no any, oh, I got to talk about my girl back home or like go USA or anything. There's
Uh-huh.
none of that. So you really got to interpret through the actions and behaviors of these guys, like you're saying. And I think it was a very, very well done.
This movie, I think it was really trying to drum up the idea of teamwork and that you need, in order to survive, you need to do it together, right? And you need the support of your fellow soldiers and the idea of brotherhood. I think that's a massive theme of the movie. I think it may be the biggest theme of the movie aside from war as hell. And
And
the
you
movie,
gotta you mentioned that. Now you gotta bring up the first scene.
I was getting to it right now. So it doesn't have a ton of backstory on each of the characters, but it does show that brotherhood with an early nominee for best needle drop of the year. Call on Me, Eric Prydz. You were wondering in the trailer, the boys huddling around the TV. You got like the static going on, the flashing. Like, what are these guys looking at? What's getting them riled up? What's getting them pumped up? To have the opening scene, the girl turning on in the music video for Call on Me, turning on the speaker, start gyrating, and then the boys get going. That was the ultimate, like, this is 2006 right now. And this is what guys do. Like, we just watch ass and tits and we watch them shake. One of the greatest music videos made of all time. One of the best songs of all time. And we're music fans, Ricky Flicks. We like Eric Prydz. We love Eric Prydz. It can't be a coincidence that he played that song for the first time in a decade plus a couple weeks ago, knowing that it was going to drop in this movie. Am I wrong?
That was the first thought I had come into my mind during that scene. Is that there's no way he did not know that this was going to come out, and he had a time when he was going to play that song again for the first time in
Exactly.
concert. And yeah, when I saw that, right, when you see this trailer, you're like, holy crap, this movie Warfare is going to be intense. This is going to be a crazy movie. But when you go into this IMAX screening and this is the first scene, it's just like, this is not the movie I expected. Just the boys getting going to Call on Me. This is not what I expected at all. And it ends up being one of the best needle drops of the year. And I'm saying that on April 11th.
Yeah, this had me going. And we talk about the technicals, how great this movie sounded with the warfare. Honestly, I was so jacked up at by the end of Call on Me with the buildup. I felt like I was at Ultra last week. I felt like I was getting going to Eric Prydz back in '06, and I'm watching him on the ones and twos, and me just absolutely losing it in the middle of a parking lot. That was the feeling I got. And then for them to cut the sound and go right to the one setting we were going to be in for the entire movie, I was like, now we're in it. Now you get it. These guys are boys. They're brothers. They like to have fun. You have the moment when you put them in the setting of the warfare and you have them gyrate and dancing, kind of making light of the situation just because sometimes you need that break in tension. I thought it was amazing. I loved it. I know you do. People are going to criticize this movie because you don't get enough of like the backstory of these guys. But to me, they give you just enough as you go into what the movie's all about. To me, it was effective and it was enough.
I would say that, like, in a normal movie or a war movie in this genre, they would have that scene, but then it would be the next scene would be, all right, gentlemen, take your seats. We got to go over the plan here and go over
Uh-huh.
the mission. This movie just jumps right into it, and that's also with the sound design. It's really loud and like sharp, and like with the song and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, it's like sharp cut right to where they are, no sound whatsoever, just footsteps, if you could even hear them as they're going through this surveillance mission. And I would say the one little nitpick I would say is, yes, I agree that I love the no backstory, but I also, like, throughout the movie, I was like, why are they even here? I forgot throughout, like, because he really relies on that title card in the beginning. And to be honest, like, that's like very missable. I didn't think that was very effective. It was just a one sentence, like, they're on a surveillance mission. And, like, I guess the, like, non-military guy like myself, I'm like, okay, wait, I'm used to the lone survivor. I'm used to American Sniper. I'm used to, like, you got to give me a little bit more. Give me a little, maybe like a little Star Wars paragraph or something, because I'm not going to understand the importance of this. So I think that was
Mm.
kind of like the one little drawback. But I do like how we don't have like the take your seats classroom scene like you get in like a Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah, like you either have the map on the table because it's World War I or World War II, and you got the pawns going on the map, or it's Iraq War. You got the boys seated, you got the projector going like it's middle school, like math class, you know? But this is kind of, I kind of disagree with that. We didn't necessarily like need more of a direction. I agree in the idea that like, hey, I had no idea really what these guys were doing there, but the whole thing is surviving. And how do you survive? You do it together. It's the ultimate brotherhood movie. It kind of didn't matter what the objective was. It was about getting out of there, you know? So I don't want to hold that too much against it. In terms of technicals too, because I think that's the best part of the movie. To have like you talked about the dialogue, it's all jargon, like military jargon. It's all comms and it's all language that you can kind of decipher enough to understand what they're trying to do. But the way in the IMAX screening, it would go in your left ear, it would go out your right ear, right? This is why you guys see it in Dolby or IMAX. Like this movie is made for that, you know? This is where A24 is kind of taking the leap. I think from like what they started from and with this smaller independent film studio, and now they're making movies big like Civil War, and now we're going full on war movie with warfare. You know, I think the filmmaking super tense, super tense. You had at the beginning, I was flexing my abs the entire time, waiting for that one moment. We have them surveilling, we have the scopes out, we have them not taking shots when they're available. You got experienced versus inexperienced soldiers, but when you finally had that grenade drop inside of the house, boom, and then all of a sudden we're scrambling, right? And then we have another moment, long intermittent period, right? Nothing happening, but a lot of tension being built. And then IED goes off, and then boom, guns, gunfare is going, men are screaming. It seems like it's all out chaos after that. But the buildup of the tension when they were in that setting, I thought was incredibly done. The freaking bullet casings that are flying right next to the camera, I thought that was amazing too. I just think like it really did its best to add the tension, put you in the environment, you know, of an Iraq war setting.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like this reminded me a lot, like throughout watching this, of a lot of other Alex Garland movies. I mean, if you think just last year, Warfare, sorry, Civil War, or even back to Annihilation, you know, they just did a great job immersing us into this combat small setting, right? And you talk about the sound design, right? Different interpretations of the blasts, right? I would say a big thing here with that though, there's no musical score. You know, you have the Call on Me in the beginning, and then you have that like post credit like song going on, which is very like mourning, sad type of song.
Good song
But
though.
there's no musical score throughout, right? And I think that was very effective and the proper thing to do for this realistic combat scenario. And I would just say, like, as well, like you talked about A24, like taking another step here. I would say, like, going back to like the romanticizing the war genre, like a war, like if this was like a studio movie, a normal studio movie, they would try to do like the lone survivor type thing. Like Will Poulter would probably get more of a monologue and then lead the boys out against for the big raid at the end or something like that. But you don't get that here, right? And here you also don't get like besides like the big scene with a big hero at the whatever. But here, like with A24, it's more focused on all right, like you could take this leap and not try to do this lone survivor type or American sniper type of twist on it. You could really focus on that one thing, right? That one little combat setting and not try to make this huge blockbuster influx like $100 million into this budget or whatnot. You could keep it smaller and but more effective, right? And that's where like this was made with
That's true.
A24 and not like
Mm,
I don't want to call anyone out, but you know what I'm saying, the big original six studios.
that is such a good point. That's what made this an A24 war movie. It's one setting, you know, and it's not like going to meet characters with a sprawling type of adventure. It's them coming to us, you know. That's what makes it A24. And to go also like the score, the lack of score was excellent, added more tension to it. And the only score you get, baby, bullets flying. That's the only score you get, and the sounds of the shriek of Joseph Quinn and then Cosmo Jarvis. Those two had my ears ringing even more than the gunshots. But before we get to the actors, just to finish off like the technicals and into like what made this so realistic, like this movie, it has this moment where it it kind of gives you all the details of what separates the Iraq war from other wars. You know, it has the surveillance, and you don't know who's a soldier and who's not. That's where it's like Vietnam, where it's like who's the Viet Cong, who's underground, right? Who is undercover. A regular civilian can be a deadly soldier, you know? And to have that kind of you scoping, questioning the US soldiers, you're a soldier. Like you are the enemy. But now you have to decipher who is suspicious, okay? What kind of skills do they have? And then also to have them emerge at the end of the movie, the Iraq soldiers, and they look like average folks, and it's literally dozens of them. After the evacuation of the American soldiers, they come to the middle, and it's so many of them, and it kind of shows you like how tall of a task it was for these American soldiers to win this war, right? To take out these Iraq like soldiers, and I just thought like those are details that kind of they're trying to tell you what the Iraq War was about. They also have the family that's inside of the one setting, and it kind of has that small subplot that's pretty underdeveloped on that family, what they're trying to do, the struggles they have to go through, the decimation of their home, and being in the middle of a war zone. I think they kind of tried to show you what it looked compared to other wars. I think pretty successful. The family thing a little underdeveloped.
Yeah,
So yeah, what do you think about it?
I think that's the biggest drawback to it. And then you try to like end it with the family and like saying the destruction of war and their home and neighborhood. I think that was like the one thing like they're trying to do like a little bit politically, and I don't think it was like unsuccessful in trying to showcase that, but it was just underdeveloped. It's
Yeah,
and they really tried to make this real as possible because they only went on like they say it in the thing, only off the memories of the people who lived it, right? And they didn't write anything new. Like Alex Garland was like pretty like he was like spot on or like he was very adamant. That's the word, adamant to not like try to be Hollywood about it. Like Ray Mendoza, co-writer, director here, just give us whatever you got. Interview all the people, your former, sorry, a little alarm there. Your former soldiers in combat or whatever, teammates, and really just try to focus on what actually happened. So if they were actually there, they were there, right? And if they were underdeveloped, they were underdeveloped. But for a movie, it does make it harder. And that's where like the ceiling for this movie, without any backstories, without a true story behind it, that's where like the ceiling comes down for this movie. The technicals are so good. I think the performances are so good. But the ceiling for this movie does come down because there is no story. And that's why it's so effective, but also has like a push-pull element to it.
right. And that's where it becomes like, what is the goal of the movie? I think the director accomplishes its goal, but can it be an all-time great war movie if it has no story? Probably not. You know, that's where it's like it may be behind some of the other Iraq war movies we've gotten in the 21st century, just because it's lacking that narrative and that character development. You know, we kind of just are going with them for this, uh, 5, 6 hour stretch. That's it.
That's
You
why
know,
it's coming out
um,
in April and not
it's
award season.
a good call. It's a good call. And like action oriented, I'm wondering what it's going to do at the box office. You kind of hinted at it earlier, but I kind of wanted to talk about this cast because when I remember because we talk movie news and we talk castings for upcoming movies, A24 award movie. We're like, oh my God, Alex Garland on the script. Oh my God, Iraq war veteran, like directing the movie, Ray Mendoza. But then you see like Joseph Quinn, Charles Melton signing on, Will Poulter. I forgot that Michael Gandolfini was even in this movie. When I saw him, I
Same.
was shocked. When I see him, I'm like, that guy doesn't look like a veteran. He doesn't look like a soldier,
A
But at the
Navy
same
SEAL.
time, he doesn't look like a Navy SEAL. But at the same time, I guess that's the realism of it all because like some guys had different duties inside of the Navy SEALs. Like some people had particular jobs, and you could tell like he wasn't as prepared for combat. I think that was a good writing from Alex Garland. There's a scene where they have to give morphine to the Cosmo Jarvis character, and Gandolfini takes out the morphine and he stabs himself instead of the Cosmo Jarvis character. I'm like, this guy isn't made for combat. And that's why I think the casting was good. That inclusion of that scene was good. And it also shows you the high tense situation, high pressure situation that people mess up. It happens at this time. Like people, the Kit Connor character, right? He's another up and comer right now. He is a guy that he literally can't recall what happened 10 seconds ago. He is so lost in the sauce. And they established like he's going to be that way with his opening scene when he goes to right Will Poulter's character and the guy who's running comms, and he's like, saying like, "Hey, what's up?" as if like it's a normal situation. He's kind of uncomfortable, and he's a rookie. And he's giving off that rookie energy that Will Poulter said. So it's like little moments like that I thought were really good. Anybody from the cast stand out to you? I know we don't have much character driven writing, I guess backstory and then like after story, but who stood out?
Like I said off the top, like there's no like one guy, like there's no hero ball here, right? This is
Ensemble.
definitely yeah, more of an ensemble. But if there is one guy who I'm like,
There's no hero ball.
but if there is like one person, I'm like, that's a guy. And we talked a little bit after the movie about this walking out in the theater. It's Cosmo Jarvis, the guy who played Elliot here, and he was the guy on the bed. The sniper loves dip. Um, but this is a guy where I was like, I'm getting Tom Hardy vibes. I really did, and he's an Alex Garland veteran a little bit. He was in Annihilation as one of the soldiers there, but I would say like I was a big fan of him from Shogun, okay, and he did not get the love there because you have a rookie Sonata and you have Anna Saiwa with the breakout performance there in her role, who I thought was the best in Shogun, but I thought Cosmo Jarvis wasn't far behind. But again, this is a guy, he's only 35 years old. He's been around the block. I loved him in Calm Horses with Barry Keoghan, back like pre-COVID movie, Irish Mob Enforcer. He's a little bit of stint in Peaky Blinders in 2019 too, right? But again, he's a guy that's on the come up now, post Shogun. He's in this. He's gonna be in the Odyssey with in freaking Christopher Nolan, right? He's gonna be starring in a Guy Ritchie movie coming out with Benedict Cumberbatch, Rosamund Pike, Patty Constantine, and this is a movie where I, for the first time, really in a theatrical setting, I'm like Cosmo Jarvis might be a guy that to look out for.
Dude, he was my favorite performer of the movie. And from the moment he is scoping to the moment he wakes up from the shot of morphine, like he is someone that I couldn't agree more with you. He is like a Tom Hardy type. Like he's a lot of attitude, charisma on screen. You could tell what he's feeling. I could tell he's an angry guy. Like he has some like emotion to him. And that's why I can't wait to see him. Like in the Odyssey, you know. And Shogun, you talked about warfare, Odyssey. It's only a matter of time. I think it's going to be a short amount of time before he becomes one of the best supporting actors that we have, and maybe even leading a movie sometime soon. I feel like he's on that trajectory right now because in the cast, this ensemble, right? This is the guy to me who stood out. Joseph Quinn also stood out mainly because he was so loud with his shrieking, you know, and that was treacherous to hear. At times, honestly, a little annoying because like that's the only thing you're hearing pretty much. There's not much dialogue and you're just constantly hearing Joseph Quinn scream for 10, 15 minutes. I swear to God, Ricky, he needed a throat lozenge probably on set. Imagine if they needed to do multiple takes of him just screaming at the top of his lungs and talk about in the absolute opposite type of character from A Quiet Place Day One. He's probably the biggest name here and has the most like industry impact right now. But
For
to me,
sure.
like he also stood out, but it's just him screeching. I didn't really anticipate that from him in this movie.
Yeah, I definitely didn't anticipate that. But then also in the trailer, you're thinking back in the trailer, and you know he's going to get injured because in the trailer they go like, oh, we have a severe what's it called?
Severely
Severe,
wounded.
yeah, severely wounded. And he goes, "Is that me? Is that me?" Because that's one of the best parts of the trailer. So you're just trying to think, when is this guy going to get severely wounded? That's what I was thinking in the first act. I'm like, all right, here we go, Joseph Quinn. When is he going to get? That's the problem with trailers. That's the problem with trailers.
Yeah,
But I love that Warfare trailer. Get me hyped up for this movie. That's the reason why I saw this movie. So for the most part, Alex Garland would have saw it regardless. But whatever. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, yes, I would say Joseph Quinn a little bit too much. But honestly, that's the point, I guess, is like trying to be as real as possible. And like the
right.
screaming is trying to be authentic as possible. I'm sure Ray Mendoza was behind that. So I'm going to give that a pass.
Great reply tweet from Scotty Furious to when I called this the best movie of 2025 thus far. He said that Joseph Quinn shrieks were bone chilling. Like, put it on a review card, put it on a graphic. Nice job, Scotty Furious. That's why he is one of the number one fans of the Drive-In podcast. But Joseph Quinn shrieking. And then also, when you had the shrieking of Joseph Quinn for like 10 minutes straight, you then have the morphine shot of the Cosmo Jarvis character, and they just switch off screaming. And then it goes to Cosmo Jarvis screaming, for the next 10 minutes. It
Right when
just
you
is
think you have a
absolute.
break, nope.
Exactly. It's just literally 20 minutes of pure screaming, agonizing pain. And also, here come the Iraqis like closing in on this one building. Insane. And I did want to talk about with like the pain these two guys went through, with the danger and the people cutting across like streets that are filled with gunfire. I can't believe no one died in this movie. How did no one die in this movie? I guess like if no one died in the true story, you can't have anyone die in the movie. But I
Exactly.
just find it really hard to believe that no one would die between the grenade, the IED, the gunfire in the middle of the streets. It's insane. It's insane to me that there were no casualties for a movie that was so like into showing you war as hell. No one dies.
Yeah, I was completely shocked that nobody died in this movie. And when it does like the for Elliot at the end, right before the post credit scene, and Elliot is the Cosmo Jarvis character to be clear, right? I was like, crap, did Elliot die and not make it at the end? But then they show the next scene is the start of the one-to-one comparisons between the actor and then the real life character. 90% of these guys blurred out their faces in real life. So that's the first time I've ever seen that, by the way, where like you do that type of post credit scene where you try to make it look like, oh, the actors look exactly like the person, but most of them don't show their faces, so we don't actually see it. So what's the point of doing that? But I digress. But going back to the Elliot thing,
That's
I
a good point.
but like the Raymond Mendoza said that a huge reason he made this, not only because Alex Garland asked him on the set of Civil War, like what's a story that could be a movie that you'd want to see or try to make happen, but he also made this because the Elliot guy, he didn't remember the operation. So
Yeah.
this was like kind of like trying to show him like for Elliot, like what happened and like you're a hero, obviously. So I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, like when he said the for Elliot, I was like, crap, he didn't make it. And like that's the one death. But no, he made it.
But that also, the scene where you think he's dead after the IED bombing, I thought he was dead. I thought it was the Ray character who is on the comms, who's kind of shell shocked, and he's trying to save the Cosmo Jarvis character and bring him back into the house. I thought he was carrying a dead body the entire time. And to find out he was alive, I was a bit shocked because there was no one that really said, oh, he still has a pulse. There was no like that moment, you know? So when that happened, it's the actions of the characters that also tell you about their characters, right? So it's like you could tell the Ray character on the comms is a best friend of this Cosmo Jarvis character, like by that action. And him saying, I need you, another soldier, to help me grab this guy. This guy's probably dead, but we need to grab him. To have that type of moment too. It's good for characterizing these people in the movie, you know, and giving you a little context on like what the relationships are and the idea of brotherhood. It's like those little scenes that help too.
Yeah, and I actually just to correct ourselves, someone did die. I remember because it was in the IED scene or whatever when the initial one and the explosion happens, right?
Was it one of the translators?
Uh crap, it was. Yes.
Dude, that was also telling me a lot about the Iraq war. That was fucked up. But it's also like that when they go out first, because it's like we got to test if like they're gonna fire immediately after they put up the smoke bomb. What is it like? Get a feel. Put the two translators out there and the guys who are like Iraq natives. That to me, it's like that's the Iraq war right there.
That's
That's
a
fucked.
that was another underdeveloped thing because the translators, like the Joseph Quinn character, kind of like not dehumanized, but like belittled them a little bit, right?
Hmm.
And I was like, that's kind of effed up. And then like one of them dies, and I was like, oh. But like during that with that belittling, one of the translators was like, "Why are we here? This is BS," basically. But then we don't get
Uh-huh.
anything more on that. It's like, oh, why even mention that? Like, what like we could have passed on that. And especially because like if you're doing real life events, like, did you really see that? Like, I guess you can interpret that. Obviously, like they did. I'm just saying, like, I don't know. It's kind of like again underdeveloped.
Who do you think was better at their job, right? Leading their platoon. Was it Will Poulter or Charles Melton? Because I'm leaning Charles Melton. I'm questioning the Will Poulter decision to break down that wall in the middle of the night and not draw attention.
uh, yeah, I'm questioning that. But then again, like Charles Melton, like I would say, like he was better. But I would say also like a bold move to break protocol and pretend to be a higher up.
That was a huge part of the movie to like still call for assistance when he was denied. Like, does that lead to if it goes wrong and people die? Are you court-martialed? Are you gone?
Right, that's what I mean. Like in the military, you follow protocol. That's what you always hear. Like Jack Nicholson in what do you call it? A Few Good Men. It's like what did he say? Like no, listen to me because like people die. Like you don't follow what is it? The line.
People die. I don't know. I think if you don't follow protocol, people die. It's like something like that.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, yeah. I'm like, holy crap, he broke protocol. Like I was thinking of Jack Nicholson in that scene. I literally
Yeah,
was. I was like, this
that's
no way happened, but then it did.
because that guy's putting his career on the line by doing that. Like he's putting it on the line for sure, and he still probably gets in trouble for doing it. But that's like whether how you go down. If you save everybody, I mean, it's the right call. You know, they had one casualty. That guy blew up in the IED like explosion. So great call. I'm putting Charles Melton over Will Poulter. In terms of performance, I'd probably go Will Poulter over Charles Melton. You talked about Charles Melton. Go over your beef a little bit with him.
I I thought thinking over. Like, all right. Let me take a step back here. Walking out of the theater, I was like, I don't know if I love Charles Melton in this. I thought he was fine, but like, I thought he was really trying to be a military voice. You know, like I know he's from America and whatnot. He's from Alaska, but it just seemed like he was trying too hard to be a military guy. I don't know. I got that sense in his voice, and I could be wrong on this. It could just be our IMAX theater, which I've complained about the sound and that and the dialogue versus like I've complained about it for 2 years now. But I don't know. I thought he's trying too hard with the voice compared to like a Will Poulter. I thought it was a natural, and he's also English, by the way. A lot of these guys are English. What does that tell you? What message is that are they trying to tell you here? I think that's interesting. But I think just to pivot a little bit, I thought Charles Melton was good. I just think this is a good upgrade from him doing a Bad Boys for Life, or a good diversity from a May December, and he's going to do a Beef, right, with Kaylee Spaney coming up in the next season of Beef, which again A24 Netflix. I think that's smart. Here it's like, all right, still the dramatic acting, but also good diversity from a May December where you're kind of a pussy. And then also a Bad Boys for Life, which is just a blockbuster minor supporting role to Will Smith and Martin Lawrence.
Will Poulter was more of a natural, I think, than Charles Melton. Charles Melton, a little bit of a hardo, but I also thought he was good. I just think Will Poulter is a little more seasoned than Charles Melton.